people, because they generally believe big picture that it's unpredictable, I think they think it happens far more frequently, and they don't believe that the process by which companies put them through has any validity. That's not to say that it does have a lot of validity, but I think people are incorrectly painting the wrong sort of post hoc ergo propter hoc analysis on it. I don't think it actually does. I really don't think that a well-prepared, qualified candidate is told no. In my experience, preparing people using what amounts to the interview series, we're not really talking about that here, but that's how I prepare my friends, as John Luck's book, Rites of Passage at $100,000 Plus says, in the frontispiece of the book, it says, the quote that he puts in there is, "This is what I tell my friends." And so when I would prepare my friends and potential interviewees for interviews, that's the process I took them through. And a well-prepared, screened, so in other words, the skills were there, a well-prepared candidate that screened well is going to do well, and I would argue in many cases is a shoe-in. Look, if you just go to the forums, just go to the forums at Manager Tools, and read a few hundred posts about interviewing and career changes and so on, and note what most people ask, and then note what recruiters like, say, Wendy from the UK say. Everyone wants to know that special secret. And she and others are there echoing our point of view about preparation and about trusting the process and doing your homework.
Yeah, over and over again.
Yeah. So, look, our first point is that we know that folks don't understand interviewing. Okay, it's a black box, and its outcomes are unpredictable.
And that's a baseline for our next point, which is playing the game in an interview is a classic myth.
Yeah. Look, this is just a fact of life, folks. When processes are unknown and risk and rewards are significant, myths drive behavior.
Sure. If this thing is important to me, but I can't figure it out, I'm a lot less able to be sure of myself. And lacking confidence,
right?
Any creative solution, no matter how bad, particularly any labor-saving solution, looks very, very good.
Yeah, exactly. Particularly if your friends around you are doing it that way. I believe that there is a safety in numbers. Maybe I'm not doing it right, but at least everybody else is doing it that way, and I wouldn't want to be the one person doing it differently, particularly if they're ending up getting something that they want, whether they really deeply want it or not. To me, what's terrible about this is that systemically, the myth-driven behavior, people gaming the system, playing the game, shading things, and so on, being clever, being, quote, smart, which is to say slick, the myth-driven behavior, playing the game, drives more uncertainty into the outcomes of the black box of interviewing. Because you see good people who engage in stupid things in front of intelligent recruiters. Whether the recruiter is using a definable, repeatable process or not doesn't change the fact that he or she's probably reasonably intelligent and certainly more intelligent than the interviewee. Not always, but a lot of the time. And I think that kind of myth-driven game playing increases the uncertainty of outcomes. And that increases the allure. Again, the more uncertain the outcomes are, the allure of latching on to any idea, like you say, as you say, the labor-saving idea, is really powerful. People want to do it.
Yeah, and to bring this point home, the myth here that we're talking about is that one needn't prepare for interviewing as long as one is willing to play the game. It's a powerful one, driven by, some fairly reasonable thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. We start out with the reasonable kernel that interviewing is a black box, and then we gradually roll ourselves into this thing. Well, if I can't predict it, and I can't, I don't have enough time. Well, then I'm just going to play the game. And quite frankly, everybody's doing it, right? So it's okay. It's perfectly reasonable. Every step makes sense, and when you get to the end of the road, you look around and go, nah. I think if this were on the front page of the New York Times, if this were on the front page of The Economist, I might blanch a little bit. I might be uncomfortable if everybody knew that I was doing it. And of course, everyone knows someone who's done it or alluded to it. They've shaded the truth. They've puffed something up a little bit. They've made things sound better. And And as I mentioned, later a reporter might discover, if there was some analysis, if there's some investigative reporting done, that maybe there was a little bit of meringue there and not a lot of pie.
Yeah. It's basically playing in that gray area for many, many people.
Yep.
Making that clever omission, being vague where need be, a glossing over or a retelling of a story that makes one look good. Like talking about being laid off versus being fired, for example.
Right. And quite frankly, doesn't everybody do that? I mean, you could read articles all the time that say he resigned to pursue other interests. Everybody says, well, that's corporate speak for he was fired. Well, yes, in fact, you could argue that case, but you could also argue that the boss came to him and says, I'm going to fire you, or you could choose to resign.
Let's don't mistake the company being polite by publicly saying he resigned for personal reasons versus the individual being at a party someday and being asked what happened and saying, "Yeah, I got fired."
Exactly. There's a
yeah, don't you know what resign for personal reasons mean? It means I got fired.
Yeah. A short job that ended with a termination, but somehow got left off of somebody's resume. People do that all the time. Because look, I was only there for a month and clearly it was a wrong fit. They should never have offered me. I think to myself, when people tell me that, yeah, they shouldn't have offered and you shouldn't have accepted. Grades that are rounded up a bit too much on a GPA form, projects that are made to sound bigger because really nobody can actually prove that the impact wasn't that big. We don't really track things that way. It's really hard to get it to bottom line. So, can you really argue this point? Well, yes, we can, folks. Pumping up your involvement to make it look like you were a leader when you're really only a team member, because again, that's something that's really hard to check on. And quite frankly, everybody on the team's either dead or they've scattered the four winds, and we don't have their contact information anyway. And suddenly we understand why HR says we don't provide any more information than yes, he or she worked here for a certain period of time.
Yeah, well, we've seen it all, just about.
Yeah.
And sometimes interviewers actually fall for it.
Right.
But the vast majority of times, though, they don't. I mean, because of Horstman's third law. You're not that smart, and they're not that dumb. You can't fool folks routinely. You're just not that good.
Yeah, there is. Let's agree. There is a lot of game playing going on. Lots.
Right. Okay, but our point here is not that lying or ethical shading is bad. I mean, don't get us wrong. It is bad. It is bad. But that's not really our point. Our point is it's stupid.
Do that again, Mike. Do that again. Just walk through that one more time, because I think somebody might. That to me, that sums up this cast. So just say that one more time. I just love that part.
Okay. What I was saying was our point is not that lying or ethical shading, the kind of behavior we're talking about, this myth-driven behavior is bad. But it is bad. My point, that's not our point, though.
That's not our point.
Our point is it's just stupid. It's ineffective. It doesn't work. It's driven by a myth that is false because of a misunderstanding about interviewing as a system.
Yes, exactly right. It's bad, but we don't even need to go to badness in order to abjure you from it. We're simply going to say it's dumb. It's wrong-headed. Don't do it. If you're intending to achieve something that's beyond the short term, gee, let's hope you are. I can't imagine people investing in their managerial future by thinking completely short term, because management is not about the short term. It's separate from the fact that it's the right thing to do to behave ethically and to prepare. It's also the smart thing to do. The myth that we talked about of the black box, causes us to justify our laziness. We say, well, I don't want to work hard if I just can't predict it, right? I mean, why bother being Tony Gwynn and spending hours in the batting cage below Jack Murphy Stadium if in fact the pitcher's going to be allowed to stand 5 feet from you and throw it 100 miles an hour? It doesn't make any sense, right? So you say, well, gee, I won't even prepare. And so we justify that because of a myth, because the pitcher really will be 60 feet, 6 inches away. And then we use that as a crutch and we have a little bit of cleverness going into the game and we get what we want, and that's not effective. Believe it or not, it sounds effective. It sounds like people can be clever and quick and slick, and it doesn't work.
Yeah. I do think it's important here, though, as well, to address some folks who would say, but wait, you guys say the purpose of interviewing is to get the offer, right? So aren't we just doing that very thing? We're doing the same thing.
You know there's some people who have listened to the interviewing casts who maybe think of that very thing. Wait, yeah.
Yeah, and our answer is yes, but all Manager Tools recommendations, everything we talk about on our podcast, are inherently built on an ethical foundation. Look at folks, you cannot subvert our intent by eliminating our assumption of ethical behavior. The ends does not justify the means here.
Yeah. Once you take away that ethical underpinning, I think a lot of the stuff we talk about could be twisted in all kinds of which ways. Without that underpinning, the foundation starts to crumble, and we don't even want to go there. I think some of the folks, though, at this point, Mike, I think some of the folks who think we're long-winded sometimes in advance of the core of our show, I think they probably think we went a long time on the preparation. And yet, I wouldn't switch this for anything because I think it's valuable.
Yeah, well, I think it's absolutely worth it. I mean, we think this kind of underpinning is valuable in cases like this, rather than just saying, do this.
Right, just do this, yeah.
Yeah, we
right.
want folks to understand the genesis. We'll never get away from the, okay, so what do I do now? That's us. But knowing the why makes us better able to handle the subtleties around organizational and professional life. So, yeah. But now it is time to go lay out Horstman's wager in 2x2 form. Well, we'll end it there and complete this topic next week. Now, for premium subscribers, you'll have a jump on the cast as the show notes and presentations cover next week's cast as well. If you're not a premium member and would like detailed transcripts or show notes and slides for the podcast, check it out on the website, www.manager-tools.com. Put the reprinted materials in a binder and refer to it in the future when you have some specific problem you need help with. I know Mark said something about that. Now, what was it? Well, that question becomes much easier with the premium content. Check it out. So, with that, folks, until next week, so long. Well, welcome to the Manager Tools Podcast. Today's topic, Horstman's Wager, Part 2 of 2. Hi everyone, this is Mike. Welcome back to Manager Tools. Today, as we so often do, we are covering the second in a two-part series on Horstman's Wager. So, as I so often say in situations like this, please go back and listen to last week's show before taking on this one. You'll be glad you did. Last week, we covered the basics as to why playing the game just doesn't quite work. And today, we get into the details of the dreaded Horstman's Wager matrix. Here we go. But now it is time to go lay out Horstman's Wager in 2x2 form.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. So we've got a slide to make it easy on the website. And here it is described. For those of you who are driving, please don't pull out the slide. Here it is in a nutshell. Think of a simple 2x2 matrix. Or if you more detailed, a box, a square, with two lines, one horizontal, one vertical, dividing it in half, horizontally and vertically. In fact, I'm thinking, Mike, there are thousands of people out there right now who